So Bushiroad of Japan on their Twitter shared an article by Bushiroad themselves, which essentially illustrates the increase in pre-orders for the upcoming set Unite Team Q4. Now, there are a few things that I want to talk about relating to this article, as well as what the article actually says. First, we'll go over the actual contents. So essentially, the article talks about the different regions outside of Japan, to emphasize, and how the pre-orders are up for the new set compared to GBT14. Now, one thing to clear up with GBT14 is that it was a very well-selling set, because with the previous GZ sets, people were already buying cases just to get the ZRs, but now some people weren't just buying cases for GBT14, but they were buying multiple cases in order to get their hands on the Giza pack. So overall, it was a very well-selling set worldwide, and so therefore, that's one thing that needs to be cleared up. So, one thing that this article talks about is that the rate at which the pre-order has increased for America is 213% compared to GBT14. So it's not all previous releases, but just GBT14. For Europe, it's 153% increase, and for Asia and Oceania, it's 128% increase. Now, one thing to note is that even though the Asia-Oceania percentage is lower than the others, it's important to note that especially in Asia, Vanguard products already sell quite well and usually better than the rest of the world. So this 128% increase doesn't mean that it was low, that like it's not increasing a lot. It simply means that it wasn't low to begin with. It was already selling well, and so there's not that much to increase if you're already doing well. Meanwhile, for Europe, it's a pretty big increase, and especially for America. So they do conclude that essentially the overseas pre-orders for this set are exceeding 200% of what was that of GBT14, which is really big. They also mention in terms of distributors that there used to be a problem. Well, we all know that there was a problem with distributors in terms of like, you know, sets running out because too many people are ordering and then they don't have any more product. So in Japanese it says, ますます大きくなるお客様のご期待に応え、これからも盛り上げてまいります, which essentially translates to, in order to respond to the ever-growing expectations of the customers, they'll do their best to, you know, just improve the situation with suppliers. So that leads me to believe that the general state of getting product should be getting better as well. With this article, there's still more to it, but just with this, this clears up one of my big worries, which actually came from Tuesday's, well, the 10th of April stream, in which they revealed the first triple rare of the set, which is Akane. So her skill is also really nice for the reboot, well, for standard at least, because she calls out a unit, she builds up columns, and so overall she's looking to be a staple in most Royal Paladin decks as a 4-of. Now, this creates a slight problem because if everybody needs a grade 2 triple rare that is a staple, that's gonna, you know, if there's not enough stock, that's gonna be a problem, the price will rise, and therefore, even though people were saying that with Vanguard G decks, they were always saying that it's very hard to get into the game because it's so expensive because of the G zone. But in G, a lot of the main decks were cheap and it was just the G zone that was expensive. Here, I was afraid that we might have, you know, main decks that simply cost like 300 bucks, which, believe me, was the case back in the day for some decks before G existed, so it wouldn't be too over-exaggerating to say. But with this new data that Bushiroad has given us, I'm sort of believing that there will be enough cards in circulation that we won't really have this problem, because with this amount of product being printed and being sold, that should mean that there will be enough cards, triple rares or double rares or anything, that are going in circulation and therefore will not rise the price of the decks too much. So that's one big worry that this article cleared up. The other thing isn't so much a worry, but something that I've been sort of watching over time, and I wanted to mention it in the video eventually. So the rest, you know, the first weird thing is that this article only talks about Western Vanguard. Like, English Vanguard doesn't mention anything about Japanese Vanguard, and it's very, very focused on just the English side. It talks about how Kidani went on, well, Bushiroad as a whole went on the caravan for Dragonborn last year in July all over America, as well as, you know, it talks about worlds, English worlds, not WGP for the Japanese side, but just the BCS, and how we had people from 28 different countries compete. And so it's focusing so much on the English side. And then another thing is that the new Vanguard logo, even in Japanese, is in English, which again is sort of interesting to see because it's the sudden focus on English, and suddenly this, like, they keep talking about worldwide, and even in streams lately, Dr. O, even, you know, after they opened it on YouTube, which is more still, even though YouTube has been blowing up in Japan as of late, it's still more of a Western platform compared to that of Nico Nico. Dr. O, at the end of one of the weekly streams, actually mentioned that, you know, he's seeing all the English comments that he gets on YouTube, and he's happy that Vanguard is spreading globally, and so the fact that even Dr. O acknowledges it shows that the company is very much aware of it, but being aware isn't where this ends. In an article published on the Bushiroad Japanese website on October 3rd, 2017, it's the same article where Kidani announces that he'll be stepping down from the president's role. But one thing that he said before his stepping down news is his story about how he went, you know, traveling all over the US to 200 stores and introducing Dragonborn. And he was mentioning how overall the image that he's always had of overseas card game players, especially for Bushiroad card games, is that they're more tournament oriented, and then when he actually traveled in the US, he realized that he was wrong, and there are actually a lot of casual players. In particular, he noticed that Vanguard and Vice Schwartz has about as many casual players as Japan, and he noted that he didn't actually think that until he went to local shops and saw it for himself. He talked to the various shop managers and stakeholders, you know, throughout the US, and they all told him that still the most popular game in the US is Magic the Gathering, or MTG. And the reason why MTG is so popular, he was told, is because of the standard format. Because it essentially tells you that you can play in this closed format, and there's always this timing in which everybody can start fresh, and it creates this environment that is easy for new players. He then noted that TCGs in Japan are in a situation where it's difficult to enter into the business, because there's both things like domestic TCGs as well as this like standard format that people are often, you know, afraid of. And so by visiting the US market himself, he realized the importance of standard. Now, keep in mind that this article was released in October, which was around the time that Zeroth Dragons were starting to appear as a thing as a whole. And then he notes that regarding domestic TCGs, Bushiroad plans to focus especially on Vanguard from the end of the year to next year, so from the end of 2017 to the end of 2018. And you know, this was already hinting at the possible reboot, because they're saying that they're going to focus so much on Vanguard, and just after talking about, you know, this like rotation format. And I've been referring to standard this whole time, but essentially it's just like the rotation format that, you know, card games have, but is just referred to as standard in the article in Japanese. So essentially talks about his wishes for Vanguard, but the most important thing to take note from that is that there is this focus on the West. There's focus on English Vanguard. They're reporting about English Vanguard sales. They've been letting, you know, English tournament organizers in regionals reveal cards before they're revealed in Japan, and in general it feels like this whole decision to create the rotation is from watching how TCGs are played in the West, especially looking at MTG's success. So that's essentially just what I've been curious about. How come we have this like massive focus on just the West and English side suddenly from Japan themselves? Like, obviously English Vanguard has existed for years, but it's never been something that was emphasized in Japan that much. You know, they never really, like, on streams, even before when there were English comments, we never really got them acknowledged until suddenly now. It's like, why did the Vanguard logo suddenly turn into English instead of staying with the usual Japanese one as it's always been? So I think it's in part because this decision to reboot and bring in standard into Vanguard is through MTG that they decided to sort of push the English side into the game. So that is it for this video. I honestly planned for this to be a very fast video just talking about these statistics, but then I realized that, you know, there are two big things that I've been wondering about that this article cleared up at the same time. I wouldn't say cleared up that much the second part. I'm still kind of wondering why, you know, they made the logo into English, and, you know, why suddenly they're pushing for this like English, you know, globalized state. And I'm really hoping that the end result is that Worlds will finally be a joined tournament and won't be, you know, the Western world versus Japan and Asia, because, you know, that's what WGP is, being the latter, and the former being BCS. So I really hope that the end of all this, and the reason why they've been sort of, westernizing Vanguard in the Japanese side, is simply because maybe their end goal is to combine the final tournament and overall just make Vanguard a more global game like Magic the Gathering. So that is it for this video. Let me know what you guys think, both about the statistics and about what decks might cost in, in the reboot. Do you think that with this increase in sales, the, community market is going to be fine? We're not going to have any too crazy prices as long as people keep obeying the usual prices and, selling on the usual hotspots like Card Market and TCG Player, or if things are going to go otherwise, as well as what you think about the sort of hint that we've had towards the reboot ever since October. But that's going to be it for me today. Don't forget to click the bell button, as well as check out the social medias in the description, as well as join the Discord channel where you can talk to me as well as other viewers like yourselves. But on that note, that's going to be it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.